Hello, my name is Brent and I'm one of the instructors here at Mesa Art Center. I teach in the printmaking department, and one of the classes I teach is monoprinting. What I'll be showing today is a technique by which I use templates, and in this case found templates. These are all corrugated cardboard from packaging that I've saved. And I'll be only using 2 colors in this palette, but I'll be doing multiple runs and taking advantage of what's known as ghosting. So the inks are oil-based, and what makes them different than paints is the binder to pigment ratio. They have a much higher pigment ratio than oil paints. Although if you do have painting skills, they can definitely work to your advantage in this process. I'm using a brayer, a roller, to roll out the ink. That's one way to get ink on the plate. You can apply it with brushes. Like I said, there's almost no wrong way to do it. One of the best things I like about monoprinting is oftentimes you can come into the studio with one idea, and as you execute that idea, it just snowballs into the next. There is lots of workspace in this studio because they limit the number of students based on the number of tables. When you get into monoprinting, you can get into some pretty large palettes, dozens of different colors, and so table space is nice to have. I'll be printing a bleed edge image, meaning the image goes all the way to the edge of the paper, no borders. That works to my advantage for multiple reasons. First of all, I don't have any borders to try to keep clean. And also, it allows me to get the most bang for my buck. I'm working on small sheets of paper, 8 by 10 inches. And so I have 80 square inches of image, where if I had tried to do a bordered image in that same piece of paper, I wouldn't have near the visual impact. I'm trying to get a fairly even layer of ink on this plate, what's known as a flat. I can hold it up to the light to check for roller marks. I'm fairly pleased with that. I'm going to ink up my next plate in a different color. These are unmodified ink straight from the tube, fluorescent. I'm going loud and proud today. We'll be printing on a cotton fibered rag paper, and with the overlap, I will get with the multiple runs off different plates, I'll get multiple colors. More than just 2, and probably more than just 3. Where the yellow goes down on top of the pink, it will be a different color than where the pink goes down on top of the yellow. There's people that will develop the entire image with nothing but paint brushes, approach it in a very painterly fashion. There's other people that will use graphic marking system and scratch through the image. You can ink it all up in black and start working back to your highlights, wiping away. It can be additive, it can be a reductive process. As I mentioned, with the technique I'm using today, it's working abstractly. No need to be able to draw. It's just responding to color and form. I have an affinity for found templates. These are nothing more than corrugated cardboard, but they have different gauges of corrugation and different shapes and diameters. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to artistically or haphazardly, however you choose to put it, is block off some of these areas. And then we're going to take these to the press, and I'll show you how to run them through the press. Okay, here's our etching press. It is a very large, very nice etching press. We'll handle oversized paper. One of the nice advantages of Mesa Art Center is the incredible facilities. As I mentioned, we're printing on rag paper, which for this process needs to be dampened so that it softens the fibers. We want it dampened. We don't want it dripping wet. And so while you do dampen the paper, one of the other things you do is you blot it dry. So now I have earlier marked the back of this paper with an X, so I know I'm printing on the front of it. And I also have some marks delineating my paper size. So all I'm going to do is try to get it within those marks. I've already set the pressure for the press based on this plate, the thickness of this plate. And then since I am printing bleed edge, there's areas that are ink would transfer to the blankets if I don't use some backing. So I'm going to back with newsprint, and that also will keep the moisture off the blankets as well. Not only the ink, but the moisture from the printing paper. There's a set of 3 wool blankets that goes down on top of it to soften the pressure. And this is an electric press. Very easy to operate, no hand cranking. I've been making prints since the early 90s, and I still have all my fingers. As I mentioned earlier, this will be a multi-run print, but this is where the spontaneity comes in and the fun comes in. So I'm going to lift this paper up from its current position, relocate and flip some of the templates, because just as the ink transferred to the paper, the ink is also transferred to the templates. So now there's ink on those templates. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip this over. And this is what I love about templates. There's no way I can get that mark without running this through the press first. I've got a great little striations of the corrugations of the cardboard. I've got a beautiful little halo where the paper can't make that transition. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start flipping these around. And the same with the paper. The one that was on the pink plate first is going to go to the yellow plate. If you know what it's going to look like, why make it? And that's what's fun about this, is there's always a little bit of surprise, element of surprise. One thing I'm going to do a little differently on this is I'm going to lay some templates on top of the newsprint. And that will increase the printing pressure in those areas, and it will transfer ink differently in those areas than where there wasn't something behind it. So that's with only 2 runs through the press, and you can see how many different colors we have with only 2 colors in the palette. You can also see how the template behind it increased the pressure and changed the value of that color because of the increase in pressure. Now I start seeing how busy these are in relation to these, so I'm going to start working some smaller elements into these and maybe call those done. I'm going to set these to the side because I love what I have going on here, and I may need to transfer it to these two. These two may be finished. This is what's known as a ghost. It's a residual amount of ink left on the plate after one or multiple printings. And you can see how all the corrugations are different because they're different gauges. The shapes are different because they're different shaped objects. But I'm creating an abstract image without any drawing skills, keep in mind. Subtle, but we're getting some more marks in there. Last thing I'm going to do before running this through is slightly increase the pressure. Now that I don't have any cardboard templates on there and I only have the most thin veil of ink, I want to try to retain as much transfer, get as much transfer as possible. I don't know about you, but I can feel the excitement in the air, knowing that this piece is probably completed. Now, while I made all these at the same time, and they have relations as far as composition and color, they don't always have to work as a polyptych. They can work individually by themselves. You might pair them up as a triptych. You might decide this one looks better over here. You might decide, no, they're horizontals. That's the joy of abstract. What I showed today was just one little word in a new language you could learn here at Mesa Art Center. Monoprinting is about as free as you can get in printmaking. Your main limitations are your own creativity. If you can ink it and not damage yourself or the press, you can transfer. What I showed today was very traditional, using a plexiglass plate and some found templates. But it can expand from there into drawing and to collage, and it's one of a kind work on paper that utilizes printmaking.